Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Simone here, and today I'm really excited to be doing another Q&A video. I have done a few of these now and I absolutely love filming them. I love getting questions from you guys. You're all so amazing. I left a comment or a bit in my recent video, which was my anxiety representation like reads and recommends video, saying that I wanted to do a Q&A, and if you have a question for me, then absolutely leave one for me, and obviously if I got enough questions I would do it. I've got like around 18 questions, which I think is amazing. Thank you so much, and I thought I would go through and answer them today. I've included this today, which is obviously my kind of like mental health slot, because there are quite a few mental health questions, and I'm gonna hopefully try and keep doing the bonus like Sunday video like for the foreseeable future, because I've really enjoyed it. So they won't necessarily be mental health, obviously starting from next month, but yeah, I've really loved them and I wanted to do them. So I'm going to start with the first question. So again, thank you to everybody who's watched my videos recently and to everybody who's asked me questions, but I will obviously say who asked each question as well. So the first question I have, I've got them on my screen above me. The first one was from Nikki Day, who asked, do you get rid of all the books you read or just some of them? So I get rid of all of the books pretty much. I think I have a shelf on my Goodreads which has the books that I've read that I have kept, and now if I read them I will get rid of them. However, apart from Harry Potter, it's the only ones I keep is the Harry Potter books. I really want like a copy, like a nice copy of them all, because the books I've got, they're really like old copies, and they're not because I had them from that long ago. They just happen to be books that I've kind of I'd got from like a charity shop, because my parents had had the copies I had when I was younger, so I like bought myself a new copy since. But I'd love like a nice copy, and it's on my wish list, so hopefully I'll get it at some point. That's my kind of like aspiration. But other than that, the only books I have so far kept is ones that I have the audiobook for, because I listen to audiobooks alongside the physical book. Because of my hearing, I struggle with audiobooks. So yeah, I keep those. I've kept those ones, but from now, like once I read them, if I read them, I will read them with the audiobook, and then that will be them gone basically. Yeah, so I get rid of all the books that I have. Nikki also asked, what book do you want to buy before the end of the year? So let me think. So as well as the, obviously like I said, the box set of the Harry Potter books, I really want the illustrated editions, especially the Goblet of Fire one. Goblet of Fire is my favourite book, and I desperately want the illustrated edition of Goblet of Fire. Obviously, like I said, I want all of them, but my aspiration is to be able to buy the illustrated editions, because I wouldn't get rid of those. Once I have them, they're staying. Next up is Creative Coffee, who asked, do you ever feel you can't read due to anxiety, and how do you deal / cope with this? So there are a few times. I am generally not somebody who struggles with like reading when I have anxiety. I will link as well a video that I posted just a couple of days ago, which was about how reading helps my mental health. But there are occasions when it's not that I feel like I can't read because of it. I think sometimes because of my anxiety, I find myself doing lots of other things, and then I kind of almost forget to read, which actually sometimes makes it worse for me. One of the main things I find is that, like, for example, when I'm really anxious, I feel like I need to do all the editing, I need to do all the filming, I need to sort all my videos out, I need to go back and like CC all my videos, even though like I'm really behind on that. I feel like I need to clean my house, I need to do all those things, and because I'm anxious I do those things, and I feel like I'm snowballing, but then I never have time to read, and I get to the end of a couple of days and I'll keep saying like every day I wake up and say to AJ, I really need to read today, and he'll be like, you've said this for the last like 3 days, and it's because I find myself doing other things. I get really distracted if I'm anxious. Like I'm a chronic like scroller through social media, and I'll be like, oh, I'll do like 10 minutes on, you know, Instagram stories, and like having a look through, and then I'll get stuck on it for like an hour. So that generally is the thing. It's not that I feel like I can't read, I just feel like I don't get to it. One thing I've tried to do is at the moment I'm trying to do one day every single month where I literally do nothing else but read, mainly for my own sanity, but it also means I don't have to think about editing and videos, and I don't have to think about anything else. I can just focus on reading, so that's what I'm trying to do. It's going well so far, actually, but yeah, that's my kind of like chill moment, I think. Next up is Think Crazy 777, who asks, do you know roughly how many books you currently own? PS, love your channel. Thank you so much, that's really lovely to hear. I can tell you exactly how many I own. I own 490. That is split between physical and ebooks. However, I think I've probably got like 50 or so ebooks. However, it also counts my NetGalley ARCs, which there's like 80 of those, so but that's how many, because I have a owned shelf on Goodreads which tells me how many books I own, because every single book on these shelves and on my my Kindle and on my NetGalley like thing is all on there. So yeah, if you want to know what books I own as well, go check out my Goodreads and friend me, because I love having friends on Goodreads. I think it's great. Next up we have Charlie from Charlie Brick, one of my faves. She says, you are such a warm, loving person. You're so sweet. Who are your favourite warm, loving characters in books? Okay, I'm not going to say Harry Potter. That's what I'm just going to like ban Harry Potter from here on out. Warm, loving characters. Let me have a little think. And for this one, I'm probably going to say the girls from Little Women. Although they're not always a little bit, they can be a bit spiky, but just the way that they love each other and their like relationship together are one of my favourites. I also really love the mum from The Fault in Our Stars. In fact, the mum and the dad, Hazel's parents, because like she's going through a really difficult time, obviously, and they are just so like supportive and loving, and I love like really lovely like cozy parents. That's kind of like the vibe I really enjoy to read about. Next up we have the lovely Gaia from Gaia Athena, who asked, what have you learned about mental health since the lockdown began? I'd love to know any tips you have for dealing with the current situation mental health wise. Since the pandemic began, my anxiety has worsened. So I completely understand exactly where you're coming from. One thing I've learned is that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to kind of be more productive and be more. There's always that be more in my head. Like, I feel like you have all this spare time to read. Like, why are you not like, I feel like a lot of people, I mean, I'm still working, so I still go out to work, but I feel like a lot of people, especially people who are like furloughed or who aren't able to go to work, I think that there's a pressure of like, you have loads of time to read, like you have loads of free time, so why aren't you using that free time? And I think for me, one of the things that I have to keep reminding myself is this is an unprecedented event. Like, this is not something that can be like, it can't have been predicted. It wasn't something that we kind of knew was coming and could like prepare for. So, you know, I feel like if you just want to get up in the morning and you just want to veg on the sofa, you just want to watch movies and you don't really want to do anything else, then fine. Like, I feel like there's a lot of kind of, and this isn't always a bad thing, but I think there is a lot of like external pressure of kind of like coming out of the lockdown with a skill or with something achieved, and this is just life right now. You don't need to like achieve things. This is just a case of like, get up in the morning. That is an achievement. Like, yeah, I think that's the thing I've learned, is that being like really hard on yourself right now is not a helpful thing to do at all, and like it's not gonna make you feel better. So that's what I've been trying to do, is like just like take every day as it comes and just do what you feel like doing that day. And if you can do things and you can be productive, then absolutely do that. But if you don't feel like it, don't push it. Gaia also asked, how are things going with your work in the pharmacy? So if you didn't know, I work in a pharmacy, and it was really, really stressful to begin with, really stressful. It was for the first few weeks, like obviously when lockdown first started, it was absolutely crazy. I feel like everybody wanted to, like everyone was trying to order medication in order to like make sure they had some, because they didn't want to come out. And this was even before the lockdown started, which meant that we've ended up with a lot of prescriptions that have been like sent to us that we've had to be processing, etc. I feel like now we're coming out of that a little bit, in that people obviously have already stocked up, and that they now don't need, but then I feel like soon we're going to come to that, like it's been like a couple of months and people are running out again. So yeah, it's been a very difficult time. It's been quite stressful. It's also quite scary being in an environment where obviously people who are sick are coming, and that's just general people who are sick. That's not necessarily people with coronavirus. So yeah, it can be quite a stressful time. I have an amazing boss and like a really good team that I work with. So I feel like even though it's been quite stressful, and like I had to have a 2 weeks off because AJ wasn't very well, and obviously I felt really guilty and really bad about that, but like I also didn't obviously want to make people sick in any way. But my boss has been absolutely incredible. Honestly, she's just been an absolute gem, and I don't actually think that I could have done it working in a store without that support, because you know, no matter what happens, like it has to be our safety too. Like, I know we've changed hours and things. Yeah, it's been a really difficult time. It's definitely has eased a little bit recently, but I am kind of waiting for that second, I say second wave, I don't mean like the official second wave, I just mean in terms of the pharmacy second wave. And then Gaia also asked, what are your top 3 books you read in 2020 so far? Gaia, why are you doing me like this? I can't think off the top of my head. Right, I'm going to try to think off the top of my head without actually looking it up. So these could be, you know, these could be wrong. What do I think? So one of my favourite books of this year so far has definitely been How Hard Can Love Be by Holly Bourne. This one is the second book in the Spinster Club series. It follows on from Am I Normal Yet, which was one of my favourite books last year or the year before. I can't remember when I read it. How Hard Can Love Be is literally, like I said, it's the second one. It follows one of the other, there's 3 main characters in the first one. It follows one of the others. Each book in the trilogy is based on one of the girls, and honestly it's like a feminist book. It talks about mental health, it talks about family relationships, it's funny, it's relatable, it's literally amazing. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, that's definitely been one of my favourites of the year. Another one that comes to mind is Leah on the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli. This is the sequel to Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, and I definitely preferred the sequel. It follows Leah, who is Simon's best friend, and Leah is bisexual and she's plus size, so I can absolutely relate to the plus size, not bisexual, but even still. I think it was done really, really, really well. And Leah is just such an amazing character. She has flaws and she's open about them. Like, she's not in any way trying to be this perfect, you know, person, but I loved it. I absolutely adored it. I thought it was really, really, really well done. And yeah, I implore all of you to read it. And then the third one that comes to mind is The Illumination of Ursula Flight by Anna Marie Crowhurst. This is a book I was not expecting to like very much. I read this because Victoria, from What Victoria Read, put it in her best books of last year. I added it to my wish list, and then she lovingly bought it for me, which was just amazing. It's a historical fiction feminist book about a girl who basically really wants to be a playwright, and she's born on the like on a bad luck comet on the night of that, and she wants to grow up to be like a playwright. She's got this, you know, these aspirations. She likes to write plays, and actually throughout the book there's quite a lot of like scenes where she's written it in play form, which I think is really fun. And she ends up being, her family destiny is basically that she's going to be married off to this older gentleman, and it's kind of about that. It takes place in like the 1600s, which is not an era that I've read before, but my god, did I absolutely love it. It was so good. It's a little bit slow to begin with, but once you get into it, honestly, 5 stars. I absolutely adored it. I'm so glad that Victoria mentioned this and then bought it for me, because honestly I would not have picked this up by myself, but I loved it. Okay, so then Nikki Rackham asks, great video, Simone, as always. Oh, thank you. Mental health question. If you feel your own mental health is starting to suffer, what are the first steps you take for self-care? So one of the first things I tend to do is I allow myself to feel it. One of the things I used to do was I used to try and hide it, and I used to pretend like it wasn't happening. But one of the things I've realised is that if I hide away from it, it takes longer for me to deal with it and to get past it. If I feel really anxious, I let myself. I like sit and I'll first thing I'll do is I'll tell AJ, because he is just amazing. He's like the best person to be like in a room with, because he's so in tune with me as well. Like, I don't even need to tell him half the time. He'll be like, how's your headspace? And I'm like, it's not good right now. I tell him, then I will sit, we will try and do something that will kind of like relax me, but not necessarily take my mind off it too much, because I think sometimes well, for me personally, not for everyone, but I find if I take my mind off it too much, then I I alienate the feeling, and then I don't know how to deal with it. I can't really cope with it then. So yeah, I will we might watch a movie or something, and I'll sit and I'll just let it be for a bit. If I'm like working, for example, and I don't have that opportunity, deep breaths always work for me. I try to like stay calm. I try to kind of try and do things and keep going, but try and kind of allow myself to have that like you're not feeling great sort of moment. There's a massive seagull outside. And yeah, that's the kind of things I tend to start doing. And I'll also talk to my friends, because I have some amazing friends who I can message at any point and just be like, I'm feeling really rubbish right now, and they will, you know, make me feel better or just talk to me about it in general. So yeah, that's always been a great feeling. She also asked fun questions. If you could travel anywhere in the world today, where would you go and why? If I could travel anywhere in the world, I would go to Scotland. Actually, right now, I should be in Scotland. That is, I was meant to be going to see Leanne from Literary Diversions. As I'm filming this, it's the 18th. This is going up on Sunday, I think. So this was the beginning of the week. Yeah, I should have been in Scotland. I should have been seeing Leanne. I'm very upset that I can't be doing that. But, you know, what we do what we can. So yeah, I would be in Scotland. I would be with Leanne. That would be what I would be doing if I could do anything right now. She also asked, if you could be any book character, who would you be and why? Who would I be and why? Oh, she said, I look forward to your video. Take care. Thank you very much. Take care too. I hope that you're doing well. Oh God, who would I be and why? I think if I could be any character at all, I would be Hercule Poirot, because it sounds weird. I love solving a mystery. I'd love to be a detective of some kind. I think that Hercule Poirot has always been one of my favourites. I love the like adaptation of his. And I think David Suchet, Hercule Poirot, that would be me. Okay, do you think I can pull off the moustache? I'm going to try. Okay, Victoria, from What Victoria Read, asked, question, best book you've read so far this year? So I'm going to try and come up with a different one than the three I mentioned earlier. And I'm going to say Shadow Magic by Joshua Kahn. It was a book that completely took me by surprise. I've had quite a few of those this year. It's a sort of a middle grade fantasy novel that follows Thorn, who is a young boy who is trying to find his father, and he is essentially enslaved, and he's sold to Tyburn, who is the executioner for the House of Shadows. And the House of Shadows is run by, I can't remember the girl's name. That's not a good sign, is it? She's the new princess, basically, and she is not very old. She's like about the same age as Thorn. They're kind of like, I would say probably like 12 or 13. And essentially she is running House Shadow, but she can't use magic because girls aren't allowed to use magic. And there's a threat to her kingdom, basically. And yeah, I loved this book. It was so well written. There's a giant bat in it. There's just some great story in it. Like, I actually loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and I really want to read the next one as well. Yeah, I'm so intrigued by how it goes, and I loved this one. I highly recommend. Next up, we have Nikki from I Read Past My Bedtime, who says, what are some books that have inspired you to maybe make a change in your real life? Could be positive or negative. Maybe that brings in a bit of books, but also mental health as well. It does. So books that have made me want to make a change in my real life. One of the main ones is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. I love Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. It's one of my favourite books of all time, and it's a book that made me realise how important it is to stay in touch with people. Basically, if you didn't know, Eleanor Oliphant is an adult, I'm not really sure what the genre would be, but it basically follows a girl named Eleanor Oliphant who, when she leaves work every Friday evening, the last person she speaks to is the bus driver, and she doesn't see anybody else all weekend until she meets the bus driver again on Monday morning. And she doesn't have a social life, really. She doesn't interact with people, and then something happens and she's almost forced to connect with another person, and it goes on from there. I think it shows the importance of speaking up if you're lonely and of trying to connect with people. Obviously it's not always possible, but yeah, I think for me that was one of the biggest things that reminded me that it's okay to not be okay, but there are also ways of trying to be okay again. Next up we have Kaz from Cats and Camera, who asked, she says, I'm bad at thinking up questions, but I'll try, bless you. What are some of your favourite movies? Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple. My favourite movie of all time is The Shawshank Redemption. It will always be. It's an amazing movie. I absolutely love it. Morgan Freeman is great, and I just think it's one of those movies that is really, I feel like a lot of people talk about it, but I don't know, there's something about it. It's also kind of funny as well in places, and I love that. So yeah, that's definitely one of them. For guilty pleasure, I really love like musicals. So I loved Grease, I love Grease, I love Mamma Mia. I really, really liked all the High School Musicals. But yeah, so like guilty pleasure wise, I love a musical, although I'm not that guilty about it, so I guess not really a guilty pleasure, but yeah, those are definitely some of my favourites. She also asks, what book would you love to see adapted into a film or TV show? Okay, this is going to take some thinking about. I think The Good Daughter by Karen Slaughter would make a really interesting movie, or it could be like a TV series, I suppose. This is a kind of quite gory book that basically follows these two girls whose family home is attacked when they're younger, and this is 20 years later or 25 years later, and one of the daughters has become Charlie, her name is, I think, or Charlotte, and she's become a lawyer, and now she is at the scene of another pretty horrendous act of violence, and she then has to figure out what's going on and deal with kind of the consequences of that. Yeah, I think actually probably make a better TV series, because I feel like you wouldn't be able to get it all into a movie without it being like 4 hours long. So but yeah, I would absolutely love that. And then the third question she asked is, if you could only eat 3 meals for the rest of your life, what would you pick? This is really difficult for me, but I would probably pick some kind of like meatballs and noodles, that kind of thing. I love that. I'm a big Italian fan. I would also pick chicken chow mein. That's a Chinese noodle dish, so I guess I like noodles in general. And then thirdly, like a roast dinner with all the trimmings, because I mean, yum. Then finally, Alison Rose asked me, it says, you mentioned wondering if all the bright places would still work for you on reread. Has there been a book you initially loved when you were younger, but then reread it and found it to be problematic, or just not such good rep as you'd previously thought? There is a book that I read when I was younger and then have reread, and I really don't like it. I don't know about rep necessarily. I think other than like 13 Reasons Why, which definitely I would say, a couple of books that I've read and then reread and didn't like it. One of those was Skellig by David Armand. I read that when I was at school. I think I read it when I was like in year 7, so I was probably 11 years old, and I loved it as a kid, and I reread it a couple of years ago and I just didn't understand, like, nothing happens in it. It's such a boring book, and yeah, I really didn't like it, so I was a bit like surprised that I'd loved it so much as a kid. Another one that I reread, which I was really surprised I didn't like, was James and the Giant Peach, because I love Roald Dahl. He's one of my favourite like authors, and I still stand by the fact I love Matilda and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and the BFG. Like, I love all of those, but I really didn't like James and the Giant Peach. I only remembered the story up until like halfway through, and then the second half I hated. I didn't understand it. So yeah, that's a thing, but not representation. That would be like I said, 13 Reasons Why for me. All the Bright Places, I'm unsure because I haven't reread it. To be honest, a lot of the books that I read when I was younger didn't really have a lot of representation in, which is awful to say. So yeah, I don't really have like a book that I've reread, because I don't really reread much either. So, but yeah, that is that. And then the last question, and that was also from Alison Rose, so massive thank you to her, said, and obviously a lot of this is iffy these days, but if the world weren't what it is right now, and money and such were no object, what would be your dream honeymoon destination? Okay, so if I could go anywhere, I would go to the, like, is it Maldives or the Bahamas, where, do you know there's like what do they call it? Like the buildings on like stilts over the sea, and then it's like clear sea and you can like see them, and oh my god, I love that. I would love to do that, but obviously money is definitely an object, and that's not a thing that I can do. But yeah, that would be my dream holiday destination. I would absolutely love to go somewhere like that, and just sit by the sea and like enjoy it, really, because I think it sounds great. But yes, obviously not likely to happen. But yeah, that would be my dream. But there you are, guys. Thank you again so much to everybody who asked questions. I've really enjoyed this. I love doing Q&As. You guys have asked such wonderful and like different questions than I expect, so thank you again. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you next time for another video. Bye guys, stay safe.